first time I reached number 1 on iTunes, um, someone sent me fan art where she took the image of my podcast, she took a screenshot of it being at number 1 and some photos of me and some clips of the show and stuck them all together and sent it to me, and it was so cool to think that somebody cares enough about this show that she actually made me art out of it.
Wow.
And yeah, and the other, I would say my 3rd one, if I were to pick a 3rd one, would be, um, I shared on another episode about not quitting, like how in the past I was always very quick to quit things in my life and how I learned to overcome it. And somebody sent me a message, this one came through LinkedIn, about how he was very close to finishing his PhD and he was frustrated and tired and was ready to quit. And after listening to that episode, decided that he was going to see it through and he was going to finish it. No matter how challenging it was, he was going to get through it and finish. And so it's those messages like that of how the show has an impact on people. Um, those are always very, very special to me.
In today's episode of my podcast story, we have Teri Holland, the creator and host of the chart-topping podcast Success in Mind, a show that ranks in the top 1% worldwide and is dedicated to helping people find their confidence and their voice. What makes Teri's own podcasting journey so remarkable is that she grew up painfully shy, earning the nickname Mouse because she was afraid to speak. From discovering her power on stage as a professional actor to finding her true confidence through NLP and hypnotherapy, Teri's path has been defined by overcoming fear. She is here to share the incredible story of how she built her show from the ground up, navigated life with chronic illness, and now uses her platform to help others step into the spotlight and share their own voices with the world. Can you tell us your name and the name of your podcast and what your podcast is about?
Yeah, I'm Teri Holland. My podcast is Success in Mind, and it's a personal development podcast for entrepreneurs. So we talk about mindset, marketing, and success strategies.
Okay. Can you tell us the real reason you started the podcast?
The real
Yeah,
reason?
yeah,
Yeah. So I started my podcast in 2015. So coming up on 10 years at the end of May, it'll be 10 years since I
yeah.
started.
Wow.
And I was at a little bit of a low point in my life. I was at a crossroads professionally. My father was dying of cancer,
Oh,
and I needed something for me. I needed something creative to focus on. And so that's why I started. I started it with zero expectations that anyone would actually listen to it. It was really just an outlet for me to share my own journey in personal development and to maybe inspire someone else. But it was really to be a creative outlet for myself.
wow. Wow. Um, you do audio only or audio and video?
Yes, I do audio and video. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's your posting schedule like? Do you post every week or?
Yeah. Currently I post every week. For a while I was doing 2 a week. Lately I've had to cut back to 1 a week just because I'm busy with clients right now. So currently it's once a week, but I like twice a week. Twice a week is my preferred schedule.
Yeah, yeah. You
Yeah.
you mentioned you do video. So the question I want to ask is, how's the YouTube like? Has it always been there for the past 10 years, or when did you switch to video?
Fairly recently, actually. So I was audio only for a very long time. And then I started just sharing just when I had a guest interview on, I would share the video onto YouTube. I wasn't optimizing it for YouTube. I wasn't doing anything with my YouTube channel. I would just leave the video there and let it live there. And it would get a few views. But more recently, I've decided to focus in more on YouTube and I'm sharing my solo episodes as well, which is a very recent development for my podcast. And I'm spending more time intentionally editing for YouTube now and optimizing my YouTube channel to grow it.
Yeah, before we go into some of the metaphysical questions, can you quickly walk us through what your workflow is? Before you even answer that question, I think the first question you should answer is, are you the one that produce your podcast, or is there someone helping you for to do?
No, I produced it all myself.
Okay, so can you quickly walk us through your work
Sure. From what point? Like from the
idea, like how you gather idea and you
Okay.
record down
Yeah.
to publish?
Okay, sure. Sounds good. So I get my ideas often from conversations that I'm having with people or with my clients, and I think, oh, this would be a really good podcast episode. That's usually where it starts from. And I always have a note app, the note app on my phone. I have a running note where I keep ideas there because, once you get that idea and inspiration for a show, you have to capture it right away or you might forget about it later. So I always have a whole list of running ideas. And from that point, if it's a show that I think I need a guest on, then I will look for an expert to talk about that. For example, last week I had Amy DeMello on, who's a brand identity designer. And I wanted to talk about print media for branding, and she's an expert in it. So that's not my expertise, but it was something I wanted to discuss on the show and something I was curious to learn more about. So then I brought Amy on to talk about it. So then once I have the idea, I don't script my shows at all. If it's a solo show, it's off the cuff. I might have a couple bullet points that I'm going to make sure I share. Otherwise, it's completely off the cuff. When I have a guest interview, when it's a guest coming on, I'll spend a lot of time researching my guests. I'll read their social media posts. I'll go through their website. I'll read any blogs they have. I'll listen to other interviews they've done. If they have a book, I'll read the book and prepare my interview questions based on that. So my interview will I'll have all of my questions laid out. I do like to keep my interviews very conversational. So even though I have those questions in front of me, I really like the interviews where it kind of flows naturally and the questions become very organic. But I do a lot of prep work for guest interviews. Then I send my guest everything that they need, the scheduling, the link. I record on Riverside as well, like you do. Um,
Wow. Welcome to the Riverside family.
yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Riverside is great. It's amazing.
Yeah.
So I record everything. I edit usually pretty soon after the interview because I like to edit when it's fresh in my mind so that I know exactly how I want the interview to look and sound and it's still fresh in my head. So I'll typically interview on Monday morning or record Monday morning and I'll edit it in the afternoon. I love editing in Riverside. It streamlines a lot of the process. So I do that. While everything's uploading in the background, I'll create my graphics for the show. I'll have the guest sends me everything in advance, their photo that they want me to use, all their links, everything. So I pull that off a Google document, create all of my graphics, create all of my promotional content, and then I publish.
What do you use to what's calendar software do you use to schedule meetings?
Calendly.
Um,
Yeah.
where do you find your guests?
So I find them in a lot of places. I get a lot of pitches coming to my podcast. So my inbox every day before I even wake up in the morning, I have at least 10 emails from people wanting to be on the show. But that's usually not where I find my guests. I find most people don't know how to pitch to be on a podcast. I get some from Podmatch. I don't know if, yeah, we met through Podmatch,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So I get some through Podmatch. But my favorite way is to find them naturally. So when I'm sort of out in the world talking with other business owners, when I'm at networking events or connecting with people on social media, if they have a topic that interests me, I my preferred way is when I find someone and I think we could have a great conversation and I invite them on the show.
Oh, oh,
That's where most of them come from.
yeah, yeah. Um, you
Yeah.
you currently produce your podcast. You've been producing your podcast for the past 10 years now on yourself. And when you started your podcast, you were at a kind of like a low point in your life, and yeah, so the podcast has metamorphosed into something different. And so for me, I want to ask now. I asked you the real reason why you started podcast. How's the podcast doing compared to the purpose and the reason you started the podcast 10 years
Yeah, it's definitely evolved. When I started it, I had no idea who'd be interested in it. So I started it as a self-improvement podcast. At the time, it was called Self-Help in the Apple world.
ago?
So
Yeah.
I'm dating myself a little bit, but I was in self-help, and I talked about my journey in personal growth and development. At the time, I was studying NLP to become an NLP practitioner. Now I'm an NLP trainer, and I was studying hypnotherapy. Oh, neuro-linguistic
Okay,
programming.
okay.
Yeah, so I was on track to doing that, and so I just wanted a place to talk about personal development and and ways people could improve their lives. Through the 10 years, I became a little more niched into now specifically for business owners because that's who I realized I really love working with in my coaching practice. I love coaching entrepreneurs and business leaders. So I started focusing the content more specifically. Um, it started as a solo show. The first 3 years was just me talking. I didn't have a single guest on for 3 years, and then I started bringing guests on just intermittently if I was bored of hearing myself talk. I thought the audience is probably tired of my voice and probably would like to hear someone else talk for a change. So I started bringing on an occasional guest, and then more in the last couple years, I've become far more strategic in bringing on regular guests. So that's sort of the evolution of the show.
Yeah, I mean, your show has evolved to the point where, a lot of persons are pitching you to come on your show, and what you're even doing is just to select and see they're a good fit or not.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it wasn't always
Yeah.
like that.
No, no, at the beginning, well, actually, it was pretty quick. I was fortunate that in the first couple weeks, I reached number 1 in self-help on iTunes,
Oh,
and so I did start getting a lot of attention very early on for my show, but I would say now it's at the point where I get flooded every day. My inbox is flooded with requests to be on it.
wow. Um,
Yeah.
Um, I believe that the things we work on, they also work on us. So you start podcasting, and I also believe that podcasting has kind of touched your life. So I would like for us to like go to start with the personal, and then we'll move to the other areas of life that podcasting has affected. So personally now that you've been podcasting for 10 years, how has that really helped you improve personal?
Well, I always say that I found my voice through podcasting.
Oh,
I used to be very, very shy. I hated going to networking events. I hated meeting people and talking to them. I was very introverted, very quiet. And through podcasting, I really began to find my voice. And that led me also into speaking. Now I speak professionally. Now, when I go to networking events, I love meeting people, I love interacting with people. And so I found a lot of my confidence through podcasting, through sharing my own experience, my own message. It brought out my confidence, my self-esteem improved, and yeah, I would say it was as much as I was already on a journey of personal development, the podcast accelerated it and got me there a lot faster.
okay. Oh, finding your voice. Oh, so
Yeah.
when you I feel like I understand what you mean by finding your voice, but when you say finding your voice, what do you can you like paint a picture of what that means?
Sure. So when I was growing up, I was a very, very quiet kid. My nickname was Mouse because I was so shy. I was so quiet that my parents had friends who had never even heard me speak. If we were at an event or a big gathering, if I needed something, I would whisper it to my mom or my dad. I would never speak in front of others. And in school, my teachers would say, Terry needs to learn to speak up more in class. But no one could tell me how to do that or how to come out of my shell or how to be confident. And I did find I did find my voice a little bit on stage. Um, I was put into a Christmas concert in the 3rd grade and given a solo line, and that was my first taste of being able to express myself fully, and in that moment, I felt very powerful because I had the mic and I was on stage, and I was the one in the spotlight, and the line I delivered made everyone laugh, and I felt powerful that my voice could make people react in a way that I wanted them to react. But I didn't know how to do that off stage. So first I became an actor. From that moment on in the 3rd grade, I was determined I was going to be an actor and on stage. And on stage I felt confident and I felt like I could express myself, but because someone else gave me the words and a director told me where to stand and what to do, and then I just had to fill in the gaps with my imagination. But in my own personal life, I was terrified of speaking up or speaking in front of other people. I would get nervous. My hands would shake. My heart would be pounding. I could hear it in my ears. I would turn beet red. and I just wanted to be invisible. Everywhere I went, I just wanted to be invisible. And through the podcast is where I really started to express myself as me. It was no longer scripted, no one was directing me. And that's where I started to find my true confidence and feel like I could express myself fully as me.
Yeah, yeah. Well, like having a conversation with you, it's if not that you shared that parts of your life, I probably won't even know that it was a time where you didn't speaking out was a huge problem.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I hear that all the time. People are always saying that they're surprised by that, but that's the truth of it. My parents called me Mouse until, um, well, my dad called me Mouse until the end of his life. So uh, that was my reality before I started podcasting and before I found confidence in expressing myself.
Yeah. Well, from what you've shared so far, you started the podcast because you wanted to you found you thought it would be something that would help you. And I'm guessing, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that you didn't always have products, you didn't always have business, so you didn't always have coaching tied to the podcast and all those things. It was more like you started the podcast and grew the audience, and then you're like, "Okay, how can I help them more? I could coach them, I could do all these other things." So when did you start integrating business and products into the podcast?
So I did already have a business. When I started the podcast, I was a personal trainer and nutritionist. So I was already coaching in the health and wellness space. And I already had it in my mind that I was going to leave that field and get into more. At the time, I wanted to get into life coaching. So I was already on that trajectory. I knew I didn't want to be in the gyms anymore and physically training people. I have a chronic illness. It was making it very difficult to be a personal trainer. So I knew I was on a different path, which is why I set out to study neurolinguistic programming and hypnotherapy and all the things I offer today. But I was just at the very tip of that. I hadn't even taken my training yet. So when I started the podcast, I didn't offer anything. I was simply sharing these are my thoughts, this is my experience, this is what I'm learning about in personal development, and that was it. Um, about I started the podcast at the end of May, and I went for my training in September to become a practitioner in neurolinguistic programming, hypnotherapy, and timeline therapy. And so after that point is when I started offering my coaching services fully. And then the following year, I went back and I did my master practitioner trainings and all those modalities, and then my trainer's training. And by this point, the podcast had picked up a lot of momentum. And so I started getting business through the podcast and getting more clients and what was really exciting for me was that I started to get a global audience and getting clients from all around the world, which without the podcast, I wouldn't have access to these people. They wouldn't know I existed. So it all kind of happened at the same time in a really beautiful, synchronistic way.
Yeah, I mean, now that you say everything now, it looks all the dots connected. There's a pattern. Everything seems like a grand plan. But at the moment when you were making those decisions and taking those steps, you didn't feel that.
No. No, I had no idea what I was doing with the podcast. I didn't think anyone would listen to it, to be
Yeah,
honest. I
yeah,
thought, maybe some of my friends might listen, maybe some of my training clients might find it interesting. Um, Maybe my mom, if she could find the podcast app on her phone, she might listen to it once in a while. But really didn't think it would be any more than a creative outlet for me. So when I started it, I had no concept that it could help my business or help me in terms of marketing. I had no idea what would happen.
yeah. Well, eventually everything kind of like came together, and now you've been doing it for 10 years, and it seems like you had it all figured out when you started, but it was something that you pieced together along the way. Yeah. You
Definitely.
mentioned that
Yeah.
you have a YouTube channel, and for me, how's the YouTube channel doing? Like, what are the
Not great. Not great.
Oh,
So,
I was expecting
um,
awesome,
yeah.
great, we're crushing it.
Yeah. So it's like, as I mentioned, I just started focusing on YouTube. So I have a very small following of about 100 and I think it's 156 followers. And My videos, they do okay. I have a lot of work to do. I'm actually in a YouTube course right now,
Oh,
learning how to make better video and learning how to market the videos and optimize them for YouTube so that it will grow. But right now, it is it's a baby channel. It's not brand new. I've actually had it for a long time, but it's brand new in the sense that I'm actually putting effort into it now, where before it was just a holding place for my videos.
yeah, yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
oh, okay. You mentioned that you started the podcast 2 years ago. Sorry, the YouTube channel 2 years.
The YouTube channel actually started I don't even know when I started
No,
it, a long time
not the
ago.
creation of the YouTube channel. I mean, you switched to video podcast. That's what I'm trying to.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Yeah, so if you switch to video
Yeah.
podcast 2 years ago, that's kind of like, I mean, that's kind of like, it's old there, and when you finish the YouTube course and you start crushing it on YouTube, please let me know so that I can come take some pointers from you. Yeah,
Yeah, definitely.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, YouTube is a large market of its own that once you understand it, you get to really benefit.
Yeah. Are you on YouTube? Do you
Yeah,
post there as well?
I started posting like my story with YouTube is a long story completely. I started posting on YouTube, but
Mm,
when I started interviewing guests with myself, so I don't know for over here where in Nigeria, the network was just really terrible that I had to switch to completely audio. And so for a while, I just stopped posting on YouTube. Now that it seems like the video is back and everything is working. I think I'll be moving back to YouTube and applying some of the things I know and see if what works.
nice. Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah. You what was what have you gotten fan mail from your listener?
I have. Yeah.
Okay, okay. Can you share us maybe your top three favorite that's dear to your heart?
Yeah. Yeah. So one was my absolute favorite was after one episode that I did. It was just after my dad had passed away
Oh,
and
so sorry to hear
I
that.
was talking about grief. It's okay. It's okay. I've come a long way since then, and I've reconciled that. But um, it was just afterwards, and I was talking about grief and what I learned about the grieving process and what I was experiencing. And what I was shared in that episode was how I was finding all of these gifts inside the grief, like little things like talking with my dad's friends and hearing stories about him that I didn't know and learning about this whole other side of him and his personality that as his daughter I didn't get to experience. He was my dad, but now I was learning about what a great friend he was and how many people he had helped and funny stories about him that I didn't know. And so through the grieving process, there were all these little gifts along the way. And I realized that even in our darkest moments come our greatest gifts.
Yeah,
And that's what I shared on that episode. And that's where I wanted people to take away from it. And I got this beautiful letter from a woman in the UK who shared that listening to that episode allowed her to start healing from losing her father, who had passed away several years before. And it helped her to see her grief in a different light and see her relationship with her father differently. And so that was huge. I had no idea that the podcast could have that much of an impact on someone.
yeah.
And then I've received some fun things along the way, like, the first time I reached number 1 on iTunes, um, someone sent me fan art where she took the image of my podcast, she took a screenshot of it being at number 1 and some photos of me and some clips of the show and stuck them all together and sent it to me, and it was so cool to think that somebody cares enough about this show that she actually made me art out of it.
Wow.
And yeah, and the other I would say my 3rd one, if I were to pick a 3rd one, would be, um, I shared on another episode about not quitting, like how in the past I was always very quick to quit things in my life and how I learned to overcome it. And somebody sent me a message. This one came through LinkedIn about how he was very close to finishing his PhD and he was frustrated and tired and was ready to quit. And after listening to that episode, decided that he was going to see it through and he was going to finish it. No matter how challenging it was, he was going to get through it and finish. And so it's those messages like that of how the show has an impact on people. Um, those are always very, very special to me.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. I'm just has your podcast ever got you into trouble?
Has ever got me into trouble?
Yeah.
Um, kind of, yeah. So it's ended a friendship, if that
Oh,
counts as getting in trouble.
juicy.
Yeah, juicy, yeah. Yeah, here's a little tea for you. Yeah, I was in the first couple years of it, a former now former friend, but at the time she was quite a close friend. She launched a podcast around the same time, and she was also a coach. And I did an episode about self-care and questioning when self-care becomes self-sabotage. Because I was seeing a pattern with my clients where they were justifying avoiding doing things they needed to do in the name of self-care. So, for example, a client who decided to change an appointment with one of her clients because she wanted to get her hair done.
Hey, just a quick break. If you enjoying the insights so far and want even more behind the scenes ideas, inspiration, and tools for growing your own podcast, join my email list at mypodcaststory.com/join. That is mypodcaststory.com/join. You get access to helpful resources, exclusive updates, and the kind of stuff I only share with my email subscribers. Whether you're starting out or already podcasting, there's something valuable waiting for you. Head over to mypodcaststory.com/join and subscribe. Now, back to the episode.
And she justified it as self-care. And I said, no, 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 no. You take care of your client. You have an appointment with a client, you take care of your client and you schedule your hair appointment for another day. That's how this goes. And I was seeing this pattern with a lot of my clients at the time. So I talked about it on the show. And this former friend who is a life coach, she thought it was about her because she talks a lot
Oh,
about self
oh,
and she was talking about self-care in all of her content. And so suddenly she wasn't speaking to me and she was very angry and posting stuff online that was very passive aggressive. And so I confronted her directly and said, "Do you have a problem with me? You're upset about something. What are you upset about?" And she said, "Well, your episode was about me." And I didn't even know what she was talking about. And I said, "What episode?" And she said, "Your self-care one." And I said, "What does that have to do with you?" And she said, "Well, I'm a coach and I talk about self-care." And I said, "Every coach talks about self-care.
yeah, the universe does
That's
not revolve around you.
coaching." Yeah, exactly. Like I was like, that is the nature of coaching. It is self-care.
Yeah,
Any coach listening to it could have thought it was about them. It was not about them. It was actually about my clients, what they're experiencing. So the friendship didn't last beyond that. We were friends for a little bit longer, but it was never the same. And
yeah.
then that friendship
It
ended.
was fun
So
while it
I would
lasted.
say exactly, exactly. So I would say in that sense, it got me in trouble.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and I've had a few other instances like that where people think I'm talking about them, and I'm like, I'm not. I'm just sharing because I had this thought or I got inspired by something someone said to me. Um, but often when it touches a nerve with someone, they think that it's about them, that I'm calling them out in some way, and I'm not doing that.
yeah. And you don't even mention the
Yeah, exactly,
yeah. So
exactly.
I don't really see where the big deal is. Like, I mean, if someone is using me to as an example, even if it's a good or bad example, preferably if it's a good example, but that's what I would love to be. Whether it's a good or bad example, at least I get to impact people's life.
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly. Why not?
yeah, yeah. Oh, funny thing is that I just asked the question. I didn't, usually podcasts that are business niche, self-improvement, they usually don't um um get the podcast hosts into trouble compared to like the entertainment, gossip, and politics and all those other kind of podcasts. So I'm glad I asked the question though.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, great question.
Yeah, I'd love for us to talk about the money. Yeah, yeah.
Sure.
So first question I want to ask now is how have you been, how have you been monetizing your podcast? Can you like show me the evolution of
Mm,
how you, okay, what you started with and what you're doing?
yeah. So I don't run any ads on my show, any external ads. I don't take sponsorships, and and I have nothing against ads or sponsorships. I did take a few early on, and they didn't pay out as much as I expected. I thought it would be a lot more, so it wasn't that lucrative for me. But also but, just the way I run my show, it doesn't feel right for me to have ads or sponsors. What I will do is I will create my own ads on the show for my programs, my products, my services, and I'll insert them into the show, and I use it as a vehicle to sell my own stuff instead of someone else's. Or I'll share affiliates. So that's probably my favorite way to monetize the podcast outside of selling my programs and products is sharing affiliate links. So, for example, I run my business on Kajabi. I have a affiliation with Kajabi. If someone signs up under my link, I get paid for that. So I share Kajabi on the show, and I'll create little ads for that. Or um, all of my hypnosis recordings are available on the Aura Health app. So once in a while, I'll promote that on the show and I'll mention it. I'll do a little ad for it. And the link in the show notes will be for my affiliate link that directs them back to it. So it kind of depends. Like what I share depends on what I'm talking about in that episode and what makes sense to share. But I'll do that or Amazon affiliate links. I love sharing those as well. So if I'm talking about a product that people can order on Amazon or a book they can get on Amazon, then the link in the show notes is going to be an affiliate link so that I get paid for it.
Yeah.
So that's how I like to monetize.
You monetize strictly by selling your product and then referring people to other people's business, which is basically affiliate market. So the question I want to
Yes.
ask is, and I don't know how you're going to answer that question without necessary. I don't know, but you could be creative with the answer. Is how is the affiliate marketing aspect doing? Well, is it converting? Is it something that you could say, yeah, or is it
Yeah.
just nah?
No, it converts. What's interesting to me though is what people buy from the show. So sometimes I'll think, oh, this one's going to be a huge hit. I'll talk about a book, for example, and I think, oh, everyone's going to want to read this book, and not a single click. Um, but one that's been converting really well is I have an affiliate link with Contracts Market, and she's a lawyer who creates contract templates for business owners in North America. And so I use her services. I've had her on the show. I have an affiliate link. I've shared it on the show. And that one has done very well. Like just today, I got paid out again for another, someone else signed up with her again. So it's always interesting to me what people go for and what they don't go for. Kajabi is running a promo right now. So I talked about Kajabi on my last two episodes. And so far, no one has bought from it, but they're clicking on the link. There's a lot of interest there. So I think it will create some sales maybe in the next couple weeks.
Yeah.
And but other times I think this one's going to be a hit and they have no interest.
Yeah. Okay. Just to go a little bit deeper, you mentioned that your
Sure.
major source of income is selling your products. What products? What was the first product you started with when you decided to start monetizing with your own product?
Yeah, the first thing would be the first thing I think I shared was I think it was my coaching services when I think back. Was just my just coaching. And but the one that did really well for me was when I started offering NLP trainings and I started training and certifying people as NLP practitioners and master practitioners. That went really well on the show. I don't offer the trainings anymore, but that did really well for me.
Okay. So
But I started with coaching.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Wait. I want to like know what it felt like the very first day you took the first step to become a. Oh, that's true. You've been a personal trainer before, and you switched from being a personal trainer to. What was it like? Starting your coaching bit. Like, can you still remember the very?
Um, Not the very day. It was a transition for me. So it wasn't like an abrupt stop
Yeah.
of training and then the next day I was a coach. It was a transition. So the first thing that happened was while I was still in personal training, I had built up a very successful personal training brand. And I started getting other personal trainers coming to me and saying, Terry, you're always busy. You're always booked out. You have a wait list. How are you running your business? What are you doing differently than what I'm doing? And can you teach me? So I started coaching. First, I started coaching other personal trainers on how to run their business very successfully and teaching them the systems that I had built to grow my business and teaching them the marketing that I had learned and figured out. And so I started there as my as I mentioned, I have a chronic health condition. So training every day was not working for me anymore. I physically couldn't do it. And I was really enjoying working with these other trainers and helping them develop their businesses.
Yeah,
So that's when I started thinking,
sorry to interrupt
oh, that's
your
okay.
train of thought. Um, you mentioned, I know some persons might be curious right now. That you mentioned twice that you have a chronic health disease.
Mhm.
What's the specific chronic health?
Yeah, I have ulcerative colitis. So I've had it since I was 12 years old is when I was diagnosed. So I've lived with it for a very long time. I actually have a second podcast that I started in the fall specifically about
Oh, so if
ulcerative.
I didn't ask this question, you wouldn't have to tell me that you have a second podcast. You're hiding it. Oh, I caught you.
I'm hiding it.
Yeah.
It's a Yeah, it's a very niche podcast. So I don't do any marketing for it. It just lives on the podcast platforms, but it has built quite a following just by doing that. And I share my journey with ulcerative colitis and how to thrive with this illness
What's the name?
because it really
What's the
has
What's the name of the podcast?
what the poop.
That's what
Yeah.
called creativity at its
I mean,
best.
right? Like if we're going to talk about inflammatory bowel disease, we're
Yeah,
going to talk about poop. So I
yeah,
thought I'm just
yeah,
going to go
yeah,
for it.
yeah. I see what you did there.
Every Yeah. So every other podcast out there about ulcerative colitis is very clinical, and I wanted mine to be different. I wanted it to be humorous. I wanted people to find it who were feeling alone, who were maybe early in their diagnosis and they don't know what to do. And I wanted it to be something that they could listen to and feel like, oh, I'm not the only one who's experienced this. I'm not so alone anymore. It's a very isolating disease. It cost me my first business. I could no longer be a personal trainer anymore. My doctor told me I had to stop doing what I was doing. And that's, going back to the coaching thing, that's what led me on this path of coaching was I was looking for something for myself. I was looking for help in figuring out, well, what do I do next? I thought I was going to be a personal trainer forever. Now what? Now what do I do? What is my value? What can I offer people? And I knew I couldn't work a traditional job either with this disease because no employer would want to put up with the number of sick days I would need. And so I went to a coach who introduced me to all the tools that I use now in my coaching practice. And that's when I started to think this is what I can do. This stuff feels like magic to me. That I want to learn this and I want to help other people through it. And so that's when I set out to do my training. So it was kind of in some ways, it was a gradual transition. I didn't stop personal training cold turkey, but it was like the universe just kind of guided me from one thing to the next thing, and I found the path I was meant to be on.
Yeah, I'm so glad you did. Well, I
Thank
think that's
you.
one of the privilege of being your own boss, being an entrepreneur, is you get to call the shots and you make the choices and yeah. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Wow.
Yeah, definitely.
Wow. Okay, so you have two podcasts and yeah, so we will on monetization and yeah, yeah. The next question I
Yeah.
want to ask now is and if you don't feel comfortable answer the question, please just let me know and we'll skip the question and move to something else. So I
No
don't get
problem.
to put you on the spot. What's the download numbers like for the two podcasts?
Yeah, that's a great question. So for Success in Mind, which is my main show, um 5,000, 10,000 per month.
Wow. Wow.
And yeah, it's pretty good. It used to at its like peak when I was at number 1 in the self-help charts, it was getting 10,000 a day,
Wow.
which was mind-blowing. Um, and for What the Poop, I'm currently getting about I don't release episodes regularly for What the Poop, so it's a little bit more difficult to measure, but each episode is around 2 to 500 downloads.
Wow. Wow. Teach me,
Yeah.
master. Show me thy secrets. Yeah, yeah,
How many downloads are you getting?
yeah.
What are your download numbers like?
Yeah, I'm currently at 100.
That's good.
Yeah, yeah. And that's
That's better than average, a
yeah,
lot better than most.
yeah. Not for this podcast, my other podcast, because this one is a fairly new podcast. So yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
yeah,
Okay, cool. Yeah, that's good. 100 is good.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we all start from some.
Absolutely. And it's, I coach podcasters now and I train people
Wow.
in podcasting
Wait,
and
wait, wait. What
yeah,
exactly do you do? Because right now I'm kind of confused.
I
Like it seems like you do everything. What don't you?
I do a lot of things. So I do coach, but I coach entrepreneurs as my focus. And my specialty is coaching entrepreneurs on being more visible and finding their confidence, sharing their message. And I also offer a podcast training for people who want to start podcasting. And I also coach people on developing their podcast. So it's all intertwined. It sounds like a bunch of different things, but it all intersects. But one thing I wanted to say on that is that when I'm working with podcasters, and often they'll say to me, "Oh, I'm only getting like 100 downloads an episode. It's not that much." But if you stood in front of 100 people every week and talked about your business would grow exponentially.
Yeah,
It's 100 people listening to you every week or however often you produce your show. 100 people are listening to it. That's huge.
yeah, yeah, and yeah. That's so true. A lot of times when people just see numbers instead of people, it becomes well. It's not that big. It's not that huge. And yeah, I'm like, it's
Mhm.
just people behind this number, not just numbers.
Exactly. That's such a good way to put it, that there's people behind those numbers. It's not just figures and charts. That's 100 people who are taking time to listen to what you have to say, and that's massive.
Yeah, and that's why I like to ask most of the professional and the active. For me, what someone I consider professional is someone who is active podcasting, right? They've been podcasting consistently for maybe maybe a year or so, and they show up consistently. That's who I consider a professional podcaster, and because everybody have different reasons for starting a podcast. Some people they start podcasts for social courses, and that podcast never gets to make it. They even end up using their money to support the podcast and all that. But the podcast is fulfilling the purpose it was created. The success is about if for something to see for you to say something succeed or something is the success, it has to fit what the original creator had in mind when they made that product. Because if I start the
Yeah.
podcast to say, okay, I want to get better at speaking, right? Even if I start the podcast and I get millions of downloads, and at the end of the day, I'm still not good at speaking. Well, that podcast is not exactly a success.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that
Yeah, good way to look at
yeah,
it.
that's why I always ask the guests on my show what their download numbers is like, so that those persons listening, they would know what the numbers is, because right now you have a thriving business with this number of downloads you have, and I feel like the mainstream media has kind of like brainwashed a lot of persons into believing what's not true, because you see all these big
Oh, yeah.
guys having millions of downloads. So like, whoa, I'm starting on my when will I get to those millions of downloads? I'm like, dude, if you're getting 100 downloads per episode, you are like among the top 1% of podcasters.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep, exactly. Yeah, and I think that's a really good point. I think people often um they have false expectations
yeah,
of
that's the word.
what they
False
think will
expectation.
happen when they start a podcast, and they think that they're gonna launch their show, and they launch it they don't have an audience yet, they're not a celebrity, and they launch a podcast, and they think that they're gonna be the next Joe Rogan, and that the next day Spotify is gonna call them with a multi-million dollar contract, and that doesn't happen. That happened to Joe Rogan because he was already a celebrity.
Yeah, most people
And
forget about
so
that.
we need exactly, like, we need to keep our expectations real that that doesn't happen, and it doesn't happen overnight, and podcasting today is very different than it was 10 years ago when I started. Today, you really need to niche down, like, What the Poop is doing well because it's such a specific niche. It is not a podcast for everyone, it's for a very specific niche, and I think that anyone starting a podcast today really needs to know who they're talking to and what they're targeting specifically, and that's where they're gonna see growth and success, but they're still not gonna get the multi-million dollar Spotify deal overnight.
Yeah. I don't know if you kind of obsessed with numbers and the data, the analytics, and on stuff like that. I don't know, but because the question I'm going to ask is, you might not be able to answer it if you're not really paying attention to the numbers. So over the course of 10 years now, what would you say is like the major top three growth levers that has like helped your podcast go from zero, nobody listening to you, nobody know who you are, to now people are showing up consistently. About 10,000 persons showing up every episode you read.
Yeah. Um, so what are the three things I
Yeah,
think
the
make the
three
difference? Is
major
that
major
yeah,
things that you can say, okay, these are the stuff that actually led me to this point.
yeah. The number one is authenticity. So when I go on my show, I show up as me and I tell candid stories. I share from my experience. I do my best to bring that out in my guests as well, to have an authentic conversation with them. I think sometimes people, when they record their podcast, they try to put on a persona. They try to like be a podcaster, and people want to hear real people. So I think that's the first thing, is being authentic, and with that, vulnerable, sharing your vulnerabilities, sharing your failures, sharing your, the things that maybe haven't gone well for you. So that's number one. Second thing I would say, I want to say it's consistency, but I haven't always been consistent with my show. I have been like, really, it's only in the
Ah,
last like
yeah.
2 years that I have consistently put in a weekly episode, or sometimes two a week. But prior to that, I would go through spurts of recording lots and then nothing for a bit, and then I'd come back again. And so it was, I'd like to say consistency is important, but I was consistently inconsistent. So um, that didn't
You were
help me.
consistently inconsistent. As long as there was consistency
Yeah.
involved, that's the thing.
For sure. And I would say, with that though, I taught my audience what to expect from me. They
Yeah,
didn't expect a weekly episode,
yeah,
because I was very clear that I record these when I feel inspired to do it. And when I feel like I have something to say, I record. And so, in that sense, I was consistent in that the audience knew what to expect, and they knew not to expect me to release an episode every week, that wasn't happening.
yeah,
So there is that. Um, so I will say then that setting your audience's expectations, letting them know what you're up to, letting them know when they can expect episodes, that's important, because it's a relationship. We're building a relationship with these people that we don't even get to see.
yeah, yeah,
Unless they reach out to you, you have no idea who they are. So that would be the next thing. Um, and third, I would say really quality content. I think so many podcasters don't put enough effort and attention into the quality of the content they're creating, and they focus on the things that don't matter, like what platform they're hosting on or what mic they're using. And these are important things, but they're not going to make or break your show. Your show will not reach the top 1% because of the platform you're on, or the mic you use, or the headset, or what graphics you're using to promote it. None of that will make or break your show. It's the authenticity, it's the consistency or the expectations, and then it's quality content. You have to give people a reason to keep listening.
yeah, yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. Is
No
there
problem.
anything other than that you want to like really really share with my audience that you feel like I did not ask? Because I feel like I'm covering every uh, like if I did not ask you about the chronic um illness, you probably wouldn't have mentioned the other podcast, and you would have escaped. I'm glad you talked about that podcast, and hopefully some of my listeners would go check out your podcast. That's if it's applicable to them, of course.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So
And no, there's nothing that I can think of that you haven't asked. I think we've covered pretty much everything.
yeah, okay. Um, um, where can listeners learn more about what you do and connect with?
The best would probably be my website. So terriholland.ca. It's Terry with one R and an I. Everyone always gets that wrong. And then Holland, just like the country.ca.
Wow, wow.
That's the best place. My podcast is there. Everything you need to know about me is there.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing your really inspiring.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
You can eat.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's obvious from it's obvious.
For my
No,
accent.
no, no, not the accent. From the domain name.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah, for
yeah,
the
from the
domain.
domain
Yeah.
name. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's where I was able to. That's oh, she's Canadian. And um, before I start talking shop, That's it for today's episode of my podcast story. I am Wisdom Okonkwo, and I hope this conversation sparked new ideas and gave you a deeper look into the heart of podcasting. If you've loved this episode, consider supporting the show by buying me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/wisdomhq. Every bit helps keep the stories going. And hey, don't forget to follow, rate, and share this podcast with another podcaster or creator who would find it helpful. Thanks again for listening, and I'll catch you in the next episode.